Hey there, and welcome to the Sarah Renee Show. I'm your host, Sarah Renee, and today we are talking about spiritual training seasons and how to know if you're in one, what the spiritual training season entails, and I'm going to share with you some tips to help you navigate. So settle in. Got some really, really good stuff for you today. I would even say if you just listened to that 2 second intro and you feel like you've already been in a spiritual training season, you've been in this intense spiritual growth, you are, feeling called to develop your spiritual gifts, you're feeling like God has another level for you. God is calling you to step up in a way. I would say grab your notebook and take some notes today because I've got some really, really good stuff for you here, and it's going to serve you well if you are, well, it's going to serve you well no matter where you're at. But especially if you are in a training season right now, you're going to probably want to jot some of these things down. You can make a note on your phone. But yeah, we've got a lot of good stuff. And today's episode is kind of this second part from last week's episode. And so if you missed last week's episode, I believe the title was the season of the overlap. It was something about overlapping seasons. But if you go back and you can listen to this episode now that you're here, but if you go back after you finish this episode and listen to last week's, you're going to see how they align with everything going on in our collective. So highly recommend doing that. Because essentially last week, what I was sharing was that God showed me this vision of the collective of humanity in this season of overlap. And the overlapping seasons, one is the season of endings. It's, the veils of illusion being lifted, truth coming out, grief, loss, and then this season of fruitful growth already starting at the same time. And so a lot of the chaos in the collective is all of us trying to hold those two things. Okay, so it makes sense. But then God gave me a vision kind of within the vision where he brought my focus to the ones who have already been on spiritual healing journeys. You have been on, a journey of recovery. You have experienced, miracle healing or growth, lessons, healing, and you're feeling called to share that with others, to share your experience, to turn your experience, your journey into a way to be of greater service. You're feeling called to share your gifts in a bigger way. This is for you. And if you're in that place, chances are you've probably been praying for God to give you your next divine assignment. You've probably been asking, like, God, like, what, like, what's next? How can I help? And so this is for those of you today. I wanted to do a full episode for those of you who are in this place, for those of you who you're like, I just want to help. I want to be of greater service. I I want to share my spiritual gifts. I want to give back. I want to help people experience more peace of mind, more healing, more growth, more of God. This is for you because God specifically showed me that you are entering this training season. And so I was called to create today's episode for you to help equip you for everything that you might already be experiencing or the things that might come up soon for you. And so, um, the important thing about the training season is that it can feel like it feels like a very intense waiting season sometimes, meaning the waiting aspect of it can feel like you're still waiting for that elevation. You're waiting for the clarity of your divine assignment. You're waiting for the next steps. You're waiting for that project to take off. You're waiting for the call. You're waiting for to get hired. Um, you're waiting for the clarity. In that case, it can feel like a waiting season, but where it differs is that the training season I want you to think intense spiritual growth. So the training season, and there's no loopholes, there's no getting out of it, there's no shortcuts, there's no bypassing. It is intense spiritual growth where the waiting season, even though there's still an element of preparation, it's much slower. So training seasons, think acceleration, right? And it's like an accelerated process. Think about like the athletes who are in the Olympics, right? Like they train. Training is just a part of the way that they live their life. But undoubtedly they go through periods of time where maybe they don't know what they're going to qualify for. They don't know what's all coming up. And so it might be, really like dialed in, like the waiting season for them might be more dialed in, more maintaining, more foundational. But then when there's a plan, when they know, and for some of them, this starts often when they're little, right? Little kids, when they know they're training for the Olympics, their training looks very intense, right? It's like their whole life is devoted to the training. Does that make sense? So that distinction. So, and their training before qualifying and preparing for the Olympics versus after is probably going to look different, right? Their level of maintenance training is going to be different than when they are specifically, right? So then they might be waiting to see if they're qualified. Then their training for the actual race is going to be another like condensed, accelerated version of training. I'm not an athlete, if you can't tell. I'm very physical and I like working out and all of that, but I don't know the proper athletic terms, but that's the example that I keep seeing. So hopefully that made sense. But I just want you to think of like the training season is you're training for the big race. You're training for that next step. You're training for something. It's not just because God feels like putting you through intense times, right? Like God has a purpose for everything that he does. And so when you can have that mindset about it, it's going to help you drastically because it's such an intense season to know that there's a reason, to know, okay, yes, this is intense. I'm being pushed out of my comfort zone. God's stretching me. God's calling me to take these bold leaps of faith. God's really like pushing me, like God's calling me to use my gifts in new ways or giving me new gifts. And I have like, I don't even know what they mean. I have to learn and study, right? It's like it can be an intense like study session with God. Um, we're going to go through more of those details, but knowing that it's leading you somewhere can really help when you're in it. And so I just really invite you to have that perspective in mind if you feel like you're in this. And why do we go through training seasons? That's like why does God make us so uncomfortable sometimes? And it's because we need to be prepared, right? God uses the training season to rebuild us, to I always see it like this isn't a grammatically correct, perfect, eloquent sentence, but how I always see it is like it's God growing us up. It's God growing us into our next version of self. It's God growing us into our gifts. It's God growing us into our purpose. And so that's like it's for our good and for the good of those that we are meant to help. And you'll see that the lessons and the growth that you experience during the training season, they're pieces of resilience and strength and expansion and wisdom that are going to benefit you for the rest of your life and are going to ripple out, right? We talk about your ripple effect here. They're going to be a part of your ripple effect on the world. And so, a lot of times for me, thinking about that God is using this for something that is so much bigger than me, where it doesn't really, it's not about me, right? It's about the person I'm going to help with this. It's about whatever God is doing. That can help me to personally kind of snap out of my complaining or maybe my resistance to it. That little, like sometimes I'll just get like a little, you know, inner rebellion, inner like, I don't want to do it, like I don't want to get up early today. I don't want to sit here and do all of this. Like, and thinking about the bigger picture, it just really helps me to reconnect and to show up. Because when I'm showing up for God and I'm showing up for you, or I'm showing up for whoever God has me helping that day, that is going to push me to show up more than if I'm just trying to show up for myself. Um, like if I'm just showing up, like because I want to accomplish something, usually for me, I personally need some kind of service aspect to get over my own stuff. It has to be about a bigger purpose, a bigger cause. And so that's another mindset hack that you can use as you're navigating this. And the other piece of this that I want to offer you is if we just talk about the Gospel of Matthew for a moment, and Jesus refers to his followers in the Gospel of Matthew as the salt of the earth and the light of the world. I just want you to think about that. Think about salt. It preserves, it disinfects and heals, it adds flavor, right? Like, think about that. Like, that's what Jesus was calling his followers, salt of the earth. And and then think about light. What does light do? Light illuminates, right? It brings illumination. It reveals what's there, what's real, right? Think about like um, when it's dark and especially if you were a little kid, if you had any fears of the dark, where maybe your mind would play tricks on you and you'd see shadows. For me, I could see the spirit world. And so, and God I would show me, I would see both angels and demonic entities. And so a lot of times when it was dark, I would be concerned of, okay, is that just a creepy shadow or is that like a demonic entity when I'm talking about when I was like 3 years old. Um, now I can tell the difference, but but as a little kid, I was like, I need the nightlight, right? Because I needed to know what's really there. Okay, so that's the light illuminates the truth and illuminates. I feel like this other piece of that is coming in, like, right, like the truth of who people are, especially when we're talking about the healing world. You know, um, I know some of you will relate to this. It's something when you have these spiritual gifts, God often shows us who people truly are. And we get to see like who they are on a soul level. And it's such a gift. And so often a part of our purpose is to illuminate that for them, to speak life into who God is showing us they truly are, even if they don't know, even if they look in the mirror and they don't see that within themselves. So a lot of times, that's what we're called to do. That's who we're called to be. And to ignite that truth, that spark of God's spirit in other people out in the world. And so think about that. Think about Jesus calls his followers the salt of the earth and the light of the world, but they had to train with him. This wasn't just some like fluffy confidence building speech, right? Like he also called his followers to be his students, to be his disciples, to learn from him, to study him, to want to be more like him, right? And so that's the training season. The training season is God telling you, what, maybe you follow Jesus, so maybe it is like your job is to be the salt of the earth and the light in the world. Maybe for you it's just it's like being a vessel of light, you know um being a beacon of hope, right? Like you might have a very specific divine assignment from God there. But in order to do that, here's the thing. Sometimes we can get so lost. We think that like God gives us this calling and then we got to go figure out how to make it happen. No, God gives us the calling and then he develops us. He builds us. He trains us to be that. So here's what happens in the training season. In the training season, this funny thing will happen where you might feel called, commissioned, convicted to do something, to use your gifts in a new way, to be more visible, to help more people, to help people in a new way with something specific, to serve in some new way. Okay. So you'll feel or receive that calling. So then here's what happens. God's like, okay, now you said yes. Now we've got to train. So in order to train, you've got to build some resistance. You've got to build some confidence. Think about if you want to like be able to lift something really heavy, right? Like you've got to maybe start lifting some weights or start doing some push-ups. Like you got to like build your arm strength, right? So, and how do we do that? We have to push ourselves beyond what we can lift little by little to train and build our muscles to be able to do that. Right? So, same thing with meditation. The reason that I advise people to start with 5 minutes, 10 minutes is because If you have never meditated before and you try to jump in on your own and do 30 minutes, your mind will most likely be tormenting you most of that time. I'm just going to be honest. Your mind will be like, you have to go grocery shopping later. You have to do this. Oh, remember that? What about this? Like the first time you sit in silence, if you've never trained your mind to focus in silence before, to reflect, to tune in, to really focus on God, to focus on whatever your focus point is, your mind's going to be going crazy. Like it's going to be bringing up everything. And so we want to start with 5 minutes and train your mind to be in the silence or to be in a guided, highly focused meditation. Again, whatever style of meditation that you practice, but you want to train yourself. And then when you get good at 5 minutes, you want to expand to 10. And so you want to build into those deeper, longer meditation periods. Silent retreats. Someone once told me this nun who leads silent retreats, because I was like, oh, I want to do one. And I was like, I want to sign up for the 7 days, and she was like, no. And I was like, well, I can do it. Like I meditate for, an hour or 2 hours sometimes. Like I'm good at being quiet. And she's like, no one does 7 days on their first time. She was like, that can be dangerous. And she was like, let's start at 24 hours or 48 hours. So, it ended up not working out. So I still have not done that yet, but same type of thing. Okay. So, um, looking at my notes. Okay. So the training season is always before the elevation. And it's this intense spiritual growth and refinement process. All right. This is where God stretches you beyond the comfort zone. You are called to take bold leaps of faith. That is a huge part of it. And God is refining your gifts for higher levels of surface. And so I'm going to we're going to talk about the fruit. We already kind of touched on this, but the fruit of the training season and then the different elements of the training season. So the fruit of the training season is the point, right? Um, it's the outcome, it's the benefits. That's what we already touched on. But what I didn't mention already is one of the biggest fruits of the training season is proven spiritual authority or confidence in your spiritual identity. This is huge. This is huge. This is the difference between someone who believes in God. It's kind of like, I know there's a God. I don't really know much about him, but I know there's a God. And I think he loves me, right? We've all, I mean, I was in that place for a really long time. So I say that with no judgment. But that versus the person who is like, I know exactly who God is. God has saved me from this. God has helped me with this. I know without a shadow of a doubt that God has a plan and that his plan is better than mine, and that I am a child of God, and through God, I have the authority, I have the authority to, right, to rebuke anything negative, anything from the enemy. I have authority in my prayer. I know that God hears my prayers. God might not always grant all of my prayers, but I know that God hears my prayers, right? So that's what I mean by authority. There's you could substitute the word authority for confidence. This is when I see something demonic, I am not afraid because I know, because of having so many experiences, I know that when I say in the name of Jesus Christ, that demon cannot touch me. I know that God is not going to let that demon come anywhere near me. And this is a rare experience. So I don't want you to think like I see them all the time. But when I have, I take it seriously. I'm not, you know, opening doors that shouldn't be opened. I don't underestimate the danger, but through these training seasons, I have built such an experience, and God has built within me, rather, such strong authority and spiritual confidence that I am not afraid because I know that God always wins. And I know exactly what to do and how to proceed forward. Right. So that's the fruit of this, whether it's spiritual warfare or just in how your gifts work and how God is calling you to use your gifts in your faith in the way that you pray. This looks like I know I've said prayers before where it's like, God, if you're there, if you hear me, can you please help me with this? And now it's like, Jesus, I'm here. I surrender myself to you. I need your help with this. I hand it all over to you. May your will be done. And what's not from you, clear out, right? Like I'm praying, even though I'm still asking for help, even though I still might not know, or maybe I'm asking for like the clarity. Maybe I'm meaning I don't know about the situation, not that I don't know about God. There's a confidence. I know God is listening. I know God will intervene however God chooses to. And like there's that authority there, right? I know that that prayer holds tremendous value and is powerful. Right? So that's what I mean about that fruit of proven spiritual authority and confidence in your spiritual identity. This is like somebody accuses you of something and you're like, no, like I'm a child of God. And it's like, right, like nothing can sway you because you're like, I know who I am. Maybe you don't. That's okay. But I know that I belong to God. And that's when like nothing can sway you, right? That's when we talk about like unshakable faith. Okay, so that's all built in these training seasons. Okay. So what to expect? And I would highly recommend if you are in a training season right now that you work with a mentor. Whether that's me, I have different levels of mentorship available from once a month to twice a month. I'm also I've put together a program. I'm going to do a beta round, meaning because I've never taught it this way before, where it's going to be extremely limited and it's also going to be half of the cost that it's going to be normally for this first group of women. And so if you are somebody who is interested in that, who truly hasn't been able to afford the deeper dives of mentorship, definitely reach out to me because that might be something that's a really good fit for you. But I do have the different price points and different levels um, of time. They're both 7 months because I just found that trying to condense it shorter than that just didn't. It just wasn't getting the same impact, and impact and results are very important to me. And so they're both 7 months, but one is once a month and one is twice a month. And then I have a 1 year that, I have like rare exceptions do that, but that is also an option. So highly recommend, if it's not me, some other spiritual mentor. I always feel like when you're thinking about mentors, you want to look for somebody who has what you want, who has something what you want. They're being, of course, you want to be that way in your own expression, but like they're modeling something that you want, that you feel called, that you feel aligned with. And also really look for like, are they walking their talk? Are they somebody who practices what they preach? Are they living it? Don't just buy into like the fancy words and all of that. Like look for the person that's a little imperfect because they're actually trying to live what they lead and teach and help people with, or who has been through something that maybe is similar to you and they've made it out and they're honest. Like, look at like what people say. Are they honest about their experience? And, you know, so really look at that. Like, look at are there a lot of honest people around them? Do you feel like they're honest? Do they have what you want? Or do they have, like, are they doing something that God is calling you to do? Or have they overcome something that you are going through in a way that feels aligned with your faith, aligned with your values? Um, and and then I would pray on it. Even if they match all of those things, pray on it and ask God, if this is the person that you want to mentor me through this training season, give me a sign, lead me to them, something like that. Okay, like show me that that's true, essentially. Um, because yeah, mentorship in training seasons is very important, and extremely helpful because it's God stretching us way beyond our comfort zone. And so usually in a training season, we are experiencing things that we haven't experienced before. And so mentorship is really helpful. Okay, so what to expect? First thing, spiritual warfare. So training seasons, they include, I would say 99% of the time, some degree of spiritual warfare. And so spiritual warfare, we're talking about attacks from the enemy. And so this it shows up differently for people. If you are a seer, you might see the enemy. If you feel messages from God, you might have like something trying to like make you feel something else. It can be temptation to go into old patterns, temptation to relapse, temptation to go into anger and resentment, temptation to go into escapism, um, temptation to numb, to tune out, to um, highly focus on yourself. There's all kinds of temptation, but um, that's like spiritual warfare can be the temptation like to sabotage all the way to like really negative thoughts. Um, the enemy can give us like bring up really negative self-criticism, old traumas, old wounds, those types of things. Because think about it, it's like you're being prepared for one of your biggest missions yet from God. So the enemy's thinking, I want to get in the way and stop you from fulfilling God's mission because it's probably going to help more people and it's probably going to help glorify God and lead more people to God. And so the enemy's like, I don't want you to get there. And I know people get so afraid. Please don't be afraid. Don't go summon anything. Don't go be right. Again, there's a balance. Um, don't be afraid, but be aware. Just like you are of your surroundings out in the world. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't be naive, but don't live in fear because God's got you. And so that's like you want to know. I just share this to educate you on the signs of how the enemy will poke at you and what spiritual warfare can look like. I mean, spiritual warfare can look like sleep paralysis of having something attack you in your dreams or in your sleep. It can look like, again, like those self-critical thoughts. It can look like depression, the spirit of depression, the spirit of anxiety and worry. It can look like sudden onset of suicidal thoughts, or either self-harm or harming others, things like that. Old trauma, shame, right? Fear, coming in, um and then seeing different things. It can also look like fatigue. So sometimes God shows me entities where they're not full on demons, but they're of the demonic realm, and they look like little parasites that I will see hooked onto people, and where it's causing intense fatigue and trying to drain you so that you don't have the energy to train and to show up in your purpose. And so we clear all of those out, of course. Um, but that's like, so it can show up in your behaviors, in your head, or completely in the spirit world, and something that you're seeing or experiencing in that sense. It can also look like the enemy trying to deceive you, trying to be somebody came to me once and he asked me to if I would contact Lucifer, and I was like, absolutely not, never going to happen. And he was saying how um he had been to some mediums and they were bringing through Lucifer, and Lucifer was saying like, I'm not bad, I'm an angel of light, and coming through presenting himself as an angel of light. And so this person was thinking that he was harmless and this was just manipulation from the church and all this stuff, and I was like, no, 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 and more no. um and so that can be, it can be that really needing to test your discernment around what you're hearing, what's coming through, whether it's spiritual like that or it's information. Okay, so that can be spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare, I think the enemy works in the realm of deception. So it's like, trying to get you to believe something that is untrue. And again, you don't want to be afraid, but you do want to be aware. And this is where, like, I listen, I don't consider myself an overly religious person, even though looking at my background here in my office, clearly I am. But this is where reading scripture, I just don't like to get preachy with you. That's all. But reading scripture is super helpful because you learn God's voice. And so you can test anything else, because the enemy will try to appear as good. But when you know God so well, you know God's character so well, you know God's voice so well, you know how God speaks, you can spot it and you can test it. And then I would say anything like spirit wise, you never ask the spirit itself. If you're somebody who you see the spirit world, you never ask the spirit itself, are you good or are you bad? Don't do that. Um, but so I always command and just say, if you do not worship Jesus Christ, you need to leave. If you do not obey or live in obedience under the reign of Jesus Christ, because demons believe in Jesus, right? So I always say, like, if you do not answer to Jesus, if you are not aligned with Jesus, you need to leave now. And that, I would say, 9 times out of 10 works. Here's this really helpful prayer. If you ever feel unsure, this is what I want you to say. Or if you ever feel afraid, because Jesus and the angels never going to scare you. Okay. So if you ever feel afraid, short prayer, you say, in the name of Jesus, I renounce, reject, and rebuke all spirits of Satan and all works of the enemy. Leave now. You are not welcome here. And you can just repeat that over and over again. And I have podcast episodes on spiritual warfare that go into more detail. So you can certainly look those up. But that is a really good prayer. Sometimes you need to repeat it a few times, but it works like a charm. Okay. The next thing to expect in the spiritual training season are an increase of your spiritual gifts and sensitivities. And so this is sharpening your discernment, right? Sharpening your discernment of how God speaks to you. So again, you want to know God's voice. Trusting in God, meaning God might be giving you more nudges, more callings, more direction, and you're called to trust on a bigger level than you have, to go and tell somebody something or to put yourself out there or create something and you don't know the logical reasoning of it. That's a big one. You're called to trust on a higher level. Um, and called into greater obedience of following through whatever God is calling you to do. Your connection is being purified. And so oftentimes you're really called to surrender and clear out like information overload, your emotions, all of those things to really just purify your direct connection with God, to spend more time in prayer, things like that. Refining your spiritual gift and cleaning up. It can look like maybe you're somebody where you started like adding in a whole bunch of practices or a whole bunch of tools, and God is asking you to purify, to clean up, to get rid of the ones that you no longer need so that He can sharpen your gifts. How you use your gifts or your gifts in general might increase. Also, a part of this in your gifts are God will transmute your old wounds and old fears into gifts, talents, and ways that you are called to serve. And usually this is like the hurdle. Like if you struggle to forgive, maybe you went through some severe trauma and you struggled to forgive, your spiritual training season might include a focus on forgiveness, because then God is going to have you speak on that. Or God is going to have you lead a workshop on that. Or God is going to have you help somebody in your life to be able to forgive. And so that's, again, kind of what we touched on earlier. It's like what you're going through in the spiritual training process is also what God's going to have you use to help other people. But that's a big one of God, because God is amazing. God is not limited by anything, and God uses all things for good, even the things that were meant for harm. So this is when God can transmute that trauma, transmute those character defects, those hardships into your spiritual gifts in ways that you can help other people. This also, with your spiritual gifts, will be tests around your ego, because God's purifying your motives with your spiritual gifts, right? Like our spiritual gifts don't unfold because we are great. or because we're even worthy of them. They, or because like they're cool and God wants us to have cool experiences. God grants spiritual gifts to help people heal and grow closer to God. And so oftentimes, there will be some humbling in the spiritual training season around your gifts. You're learning God is in charge of my gifts. I'm not in charge of my gifts. To really just clear out any of that ego that could have gotten in there. Um, it can be increased visibility with how you share your gifts. Um, Learning more protection, that kind of borders on spiritual warfare. Um, yeah, are you glorifying yourself or are you glorifying God? It's a big one. And building more stability in your gifts, more consistency. That's all of that is with being able to be clear and honest and to not be contaminating what God is telling you with your own opinions, which is very hard. That's what I mentor a lot of my clients on. Um, so yeah, so that's a good one. So pay attention. Like, is God asking you to share your gifts in a new way, to use your gifts in a new way, maybe to help a different kind of person or to talk to somebody about them? Or is God giving you a new spiritual gift that he's calling you to develop? All of that can be a part of this training season. Okay, next, deep surrender. The training season is a season of deep surrender. It is humbling again. So it is this reminder that God is rebuilding you. You are not rebuilding you on your own, right? So we got to bust this narrative that ease equals meant to be. That is a big narrative in the spirituality world where and it's just it it sabotages so many people. And so we've got to bust that narrative because ease does not equal meant to be. Um, God stretches us beyond our comfort zone all of the time. And so, especially in the training season, you are often pushed into greater God reliance, which is very uncomfortable because it's very uncomfortable for the ego, right? It's very uncomfortable for that part of us that human part of us that wants to control and manage and be certain of. And this is where you build stability in your faith because the training season is where you're like, maybe you're being financially stretched and you're like, I went through this relatively recently where it was like, I didn't even know how I was going to pay for food or pay my rent. And something would come through at the last minute. I was literally just barely getting by, relying on God to send me people to, open up new avenues, to bring clients in, to, help me in those ways. And so that can be a big one of really surrendering and seeing that God will provide for you if you're following what God's telling you to do. Again, bold leaps of faith, the surrendering to God's will and going forward with where God is calling you with full faith and belief. This might be moves. So a lot of times that's relocations. It's a trip. It's going to an AA meeting. It's reaching out to somebody for help. It's uh, saying that you're available to help others, putting yourself out there. It's right, like taking that bold leap of faith, starting a business, volunteering somewhere, applying for a new job, starting a family, falling in love, right? All those things. and really just letting go of the comfort zone, right? Not making comfort your God. In society right now, we have a really big problem with that. We have so many things available to us that people have made comfort their God. That doesn't last in the training season. God gets rid of that really quick and reminds us, but it's not to punish us. It brings us closer to Him because it reminds us that when all else fails, God shows up for us because God loves you dearly and will never give up on you. And then last but not least, of things to expect in the training season are tests of faith, which build resilience. So this is, do you give up when you don't see results instantly? Do you stop praying when it seems like God isn't answering? A test of faith, this can be where God gives you a calling and then God goes silent because it's testing. Are you going to listen to what He first told you, even if He doesn't respond to the same question the next day or the next day or the next day, even if He doesn't give you the next step? Are you going to believe? When I moved into this place where I am now, on moving day, this I saw this beautiful rainbow out there, and um, in one of the biblical descriptions of the sign of the rainbow, it's that it's the new covenant of God. It can be that God's not going to make you go through what you went through again. Um, and for me, that was a part of that financial growth. And it was like trusting that even in the months that it seemed really slow and it seemed like it was going to get really hard again. Um, just because the economy is funky and all of that, but believing God promised me, and and it has been better, right? It has been. It's like, God was having me rebuild my business essentially, and so now it's growing. Starting the podcast, not knowing if anybody was even watching, but keeping going every single week because God called me to talk about these things. Not knowing if anybody even likes the show, right? Like keeping going. And then seeing the numbers start to pick up and like, okay, people are here, right? Like, but in the beginning, it was like, I just got to keep showing up because God's calling me to do this. And I got to trust that it's for a reason. And that if one person watches this and is touched by today's video, that's enough. These are, those are parts of, the spiritual training seasons. Seeing that it's God's will, not ours. Um, but here's the thing, you will see the fruit. Okay. So it's not, again, like it's not just like tests for fun. You'll see that you'll build the resilience. You'll see that now going forward, you can absolutely say, I walk by faith and not by sight. And tell you, I don't think I had faith as strong as I do now before certain hardships, for sure. It was going through the really hard things and seeing how God showed up for me, where I know no matter what, He's got me. Now, there's no question, no matter what. And I am all in. And that comes from these training seasons. It can be a hidden season. It can be like you're preparing for the visibility, but it's not happening yet. And trusting. again, like still showing up, trusting that there's a plan? And will you choose God and aligning with God's vision over your ego? That's a huge one. Also, a test of faith can be being misunderstood or rejected, right? Going through a rejection from a human, but God doesn't reject you, right? So I think purification, testing your faith to build your resilience, just such a gift to have, and it will serve you well. And so all of that is why this is the season to, like, if you are feeling some of this stuff come up for you, you might have all of it, you might have just one or two, you might have little pieces, but wherever you are on that journey, this is a season to prioritize your spiritual development and spiritual growth. It's time to go deeper. It's a time to really focus on your prayer practice, on your meditation practice, to give God permission to send you. The training season is where we raise our hands and we say, God, I'm here. I'm here. I'm willing. Whatever you need, send me. Train me. Tell me what to do. Send me. I'm here and I'm available. Make me your instrument. That's our job. And then our job is to go where God sends us, to train how God wants to train us, and to show up willing and ready and devoted to his plan for us every single day. And I promise you, extraordinary things will happen in your life and in you when you do that. And so a couple journal prompts to help you if you want to get some clarity on what this looks like for you. Journal, God, what are you strengthening in me right now? Just write like you're writing a letter to God. God, what are you strengthening in me right now? God, what gifts are you growing in me right now? What gifts are you developing for me right now? And you can reflect, also journal on what's going on in your life, and notice like the themes. Usually there will be a theme of kind of core lessons coming up. Like if you're having like touchy relationships, generally if you journal about them, you'll find a theme, or core opportunities, as God calls it, right? Like we think of core lessons, core triggers, but core opportunities for growth. And that will show you like, oh, God's developing my patience. God's developing my forgiveness. God's developing my discernment in spirits of who people are. God's developing my ability to speak up, my visibility, my listening, right? So journaling on what's coming up for you in your life can also give you clues by noticing those themes of what are the core lessons, what are the opportunities coming up right now. And just to remember, like this whole process is ultimately so that you can go from theory to living your faith, right? So that you can take your beliefs, your faith, your spiritual connection, and from theory into how you live even more, right? It's embodiment. It's taking your, it might be even like taking your teachings if you've been in training or school. Okay, that's great. Now you have all the knowledge. How do you live it? How do you bring it into your heart? How do you practice it? How do you practice Surrender. We all know that we need to surrender. How do you practice it? How do you practice surrender in the areas of your life where you're clinging? We generally will have a couple areas where we're like, maybe we're really good at surrender everywhere else. And then we have those like couple things where it's so challenging. And so that's it. Like that's it. It's coming, the training season is coming into those nooks and crannies in your life where maybe the practice is hard and you're focused there until you get it and you start to embody it on a deeper level. And then you start to experience greater peace, greater fulfillment, greater clarity, greater purpose. And so this season, it's growing you into a bright light. It's developing you so that you can be the salt of the earth and you can be a light in this world. And God can use you as his instrument. And so that your life can glorify him and what's possible when we walk this path, when we let God work in our lives. So it's such a gift. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for saying yes to God and for being on this training season journey with God, however that is showing up for you. Thank you for being a bright light in the world. We need you and we love you and you're so important. Just thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit thumbs up, you subscribe, follow, all of the things. I would love to hear from you in the comments what resonated for you today. Follow me over on Instagram at the Sarah Renee Show, sarahrenee.com. You can sign up for my Monday emails, Love Notes from God. You can also learn about working with me. My mentorship programs are under Why Work With Me on sarahrenee.com. You can go over there. What else? At the Sarah Renee Show on Substack if you prefer written pieces of content. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much. I'm sending you so much love and I would love to support you again. So if you're going through this and you want some mentorship, book a session or reach out to me about my official mentorship programs. I would love to be a part of your journey. Okay, sending you so much love. See you soon. Bye.